Our next speaker is Ray Yu Yang, and she will be speaking about diversity and nutritional values of vegetables and staples in Taiwan.
It's past the morning already. Okay, my study is pretty simple and straightforward. The objective is we try to contrast the plant foods in the past that is selected by the ecosystems, and the plant foods at the present that selected by the current food systems. And why I use the Taiwan is a case only, but some advantage that I choose Taiwan is basically Taiwan is an island nation, and it's been thousands of years already that people live there. However, people live in a quite isolated way because it's an island. Of course, there is some exchange, but quite isolated. Only until the recent 100, 200 years that the population in these islands become dominated by the immigration, the Chinese immigrations. So probably this background is everybody knows already in this events, and we all know that the dietary factors become the top the risk factors for the early deaths. This is global. In the sub-Saharan Africa, still the child malnutrition remains the #1 risk factor. I'm not going to show the detailed data, but the question is that dietary is the risk factors for the early deaths. And then at the same time, we also know that the nature provides us a lot of rich foods that are beneficial to our health and can also prevent diseases. Of course, there are many factors that attribute to these dynamics. But why this health benefits is not happened in our current diets? So maybe we'll start to say that diets that consist about 5 major groups. So staples that provides our energy, and then nuts, legumes, they are rich in oil and protein, and then fruits taste good, and animal source food. Vegetable kind of all the others, edible plants. So that make the vegetable as food groups that are most diverse in terms of the species, types, texture, color, shapes, and also the most abundant and diverse phytochemicals. So, and then come to there are current food system, though it's very complicated. However, we also notice that the modern food systems that quite emphasize on the mass-produced and cost-effective production and distributions. So we can see that the vegetable production actually is very labor-intensive, and a lot of vegetables are perishable, and these are and it sometimes attracts insects and diseases. So these characters does not really fit well to the modern food systems. So a lot of it, the many traditional the vegetables traditional in our diets actually is being narrowed down to a fewer species. For example, like tomato, onions, cabbage, carrot, and cucumbers. And then you can see the common characters are these kind of vegetable species have a longer shelf life that actually fit better to the current food systems. So these studies try to I've already mentioned, try to compare the species and the nutritional values of the staples and vegetables. The plant food, basically the plant foods they used in the past and present in Taiwan. The method we use are quite simple. Plant foods in the past diets are summarized from the the review of ethnobotanical studies. And so in Taiwan, overall, there are 9 major indigenous peoples groups. So we have already covered the major 8 groups in island, and there is another groups actually outside island. We didn't include that. So we cover the major 9 indigenous peoples that plant food use. And then the current plant foods in our diets are the data we take from the national consumption surveys in Taiwan, and these are open access. The nutritional data, we try to compare the nutritional values for the vegetable and staples, and the nutritional value we take from the World Vegetable Center's nutrient data. These are the data generated at the same lab, so it's easier to make the comparisons of different species. And those species that we compare are also grown in the same locations, so it will not affect much on different locations. And as I mentioned, that why I choose Taiwan as a case, it's also Taiwan is it's very high biodiversity, and then in the south it's more the tropical climates. To the north it's subtropical climates, so that's make the plant species and very diverse. And then the staples that we use, the other food composition tables and also database. The reported functional properties, we also review the functional properties from the literature reviews, and then the properties will include the anti-carcinogenic, antimicrobial, antioxidants, anti-diabetes, and anti-inflammatory activities. These are the functional properties that we review from the literature. So here I will just show part of the data. So overall, we collect from the ethnobotanical reviews that we include the studies with the interviews with the senior citizens, that those people still experience the traditional lifestyles, so that they can recall more about the plant foods in their diets. So overall, we can see that this is Taiwan, and then the indigenous peoples groups are basically cover all over the Taiwan. In the West, later on it's more affected by the immigrations. Then we can see the vegetables. The most diverse one is the amis. Amis is the first one, and in the purple color, it's in the East Coast. The other groups also more or less that they use different kinds of plant species. And in this study, we also include staples. That times they don't have the concept about staples. They actually only have the so-called edible plant vegetables, and then the primary is food, and primary food basically is providing the energies. So total, we have the 350 plant species used from the 800 plant species reported, and 350 species are the edible plants. So first we compare the plants, priority plants, the list used in the Africa regions and also used in the Southeast Asia regions. And we used two documents. One was called POTA, that's Plant Resources of Tropical Africa. Another document is PROSA, that is Tropical Asia, Plant Resources of the Southeast Asia. So we can see that when we compare the numbers, the plant species, the PROSA, the priority one is 118 species. It doesn't mean that their species are less, it's just their priority list, list in that book. And PROTA, they actually collect 350, but they listed the higher priority one, they give 275 species. In Taiwan, that, as I mentioned, the plant vegetables, it's about 150 species. When I compare the overlap between Taiwan and PROSA, there are only 12% of Taiwan indigenous vegetable, traditional vegetable, indigenous vegetables included in the PROSA in the Southeast Asia. And for compare Taiwan and the plant species from Africa, it's only 14% of Taiwan traditional vegetables included in the in the Africa priority list. And the overlap between the Africa and Asia, it depends on because the priority list. So we can see 19% of the PROTA IV, the traditional list including the PROSHA, but 45 of the Southeast vegetable list. Is there already? Oh, okay. So quickly I go to the compare the nutritional value. So we can quickly see that I include the three vegetable groups. The first one is African and Asian traditional vegetable. Second one is the Amis traditional vegetable. The third one, the orange one, is the common vegetables. I choose 30 species. The first one is about 200 species, 350 types of vegetable. The second one, 60. Overall, the result, oh, it didn't show up. Overall, the results is the common vegetables basically it's higher, relative higher sugars, and the others is all lower compared to the other traditional vegetables. And in terms of when we compare the nutrient content of staples, and the staples can provide equivalent energies, but the staples, you can find there are many different kinds of primary foods that can provide higher protein and calcium, and we also compare the others. So overall, I think this study basically is the layouts, the traditional plant species that to address current food systems that it can be used for to fill in the gaps. Thank you.